Make a motion, we accept the minutes of January 16th.
Second?
No,
Wait a
that's
minute.
today.
What about
Oh,
November 14th?
It's,
November 14th,
Yeah,
sorry.
that's the one, that's the one, gotcha.
This, at the head here is, the headline got me. November 14th, yes indeed. Did we take a vote? Did we?
Yeah. You second?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah.
didn't hear you say that.
All
All
right.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Imagine
I've got
that.
a couple of questions, I thought maybe before we get into anything. When I was done. What's the status on the land for Bellevue?
So,
Because you were working on
yeah,
that, so I wondered how
yeah,
far it had gotten.
I've been in contact with Ms. Delaney
Yeah.
off and on. Basically, you know what, under our bylaws, it says that, you know, there's the note on the 21E
Okay.
to be conducted. I talked to her about it, I looked at the way the bylaw wording is constructed, and the Board of Selectmen have the authority to, you know, vote whether or not they're going to require a 21E. So I asked her to provide some sort of statement and backup to basically affirm that there's no hazardous waste contamination on that property before, you know, I don't want to have her spend $500 on a full-blown 21E assessment to be done, so at least some sort of certification or statement to the Board of Selectmen stating that there is no hazardous waste issues there before taking an official vote to support.
Because I don't believe there was anything ever
I
on
don't,
that land.
I don't think so either. And she said that all they used it for was like for picnicking and stuff like that.
Yeah, because my daughter used to go swimming in the river with a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Her family
So-
owned part of it or something, they used to go swimming down there.
Yeah, so Jim
they-
Baird's supposed to be working on the actual wording of
Okay.
the town meeting vote and the deed transfer stuff, so everything else should be all set once the Board of Selectmen just vote to not require a 21A. And support it at town meeting. So. I tried to get her into a Board of Selectmen meeting to at least kind of give a little bit of a background as to
Yeah.
why they want to make the donation and all that stuff, but a lot of they couldn't make night meetings and just going to Florida. So,
Yeah.
so we'll see.
Another thing was on the host agreements on the marijuana, where they stand, and
Mhm.
will there be any money coming in
I wouldn't project any.
during this budget year?
I wouldn't project any money for this budget year.
Okay.
If there's anything, it'd be minimal because the tax revenue that 3% tax revenue that's stated in those agreements
Mhm.
comes in 14 months after.
Okay.
Yeah,
Their
they have
first-
yeah.
their first statement?
Right, so
So
you have to
it'd
get
be-
it, bring it in, have it up, like, basically kind of like, yep, this is the money that we made, and then pay the amount. So I don't see that coming in this fiscal year, or in the next fiscal year.
Do we hear any, does the selectmen hear any progress reports of how these outfits are coming? How close they are, and
Yeah.
probably
The
not.
one, I know that the one, or the CPC one is close to being
Mm.
open. They've done a few site visits,
Mhm.
and seeing the progress on that.
Okay.
I mean, the one on High Hawk Farm just got approved, so there hasn't
Yeah.
been any push, any
That'll take a while.
motion on that. And I haven't really gotten much of an update on the outdoor cultivation one, although it's
Mm.
in the middle of winter, you don't really know how much progress he's really gonna make. Most of that is really on the licensing side, which is its own
Mm.
process, so.
Okay.
Mainly the licensing stuff, CPC is the closest.
Well, good.
That's the one by the solar farm down there? Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they have a building up?
Yep, building's up, and they're very close to going into operation. We've actually started some of it before the end of the.
Happy New Year.
Hey.
Yeah.
They're not, are they growing in it?
They are not officially growing in it
Okay.
because they don't have their indoor cultivation license approved yet, but they did start doing outdoor at the end of the last, I think they got it into the ground around July, August, so they
Yeah.
didn't have a full year of cultivation, so
Yeah.
they at least were able to prove proof of concept that they could do it.
Okay.
Now, does that stuff die in the winter? And you have to plant it again like
It goes
corn?
dormant, kind of like a.
Oh, okay, so you don't have to plant it again
I
next
am not sure, to tell you the truth, so.
It's not like corn, then you gotta plant it every year.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like corn or if it's like grapevines.
Yeah.
No idea. I got a black
Yeah, I have
belt.
to sniff around there.
Depends on the temperature.
Start Googling how everything grows. So maybe in 2022.
22, you'll probably see it, but I would say you probably want to see what comes in for a year before you start projecting
Yeah.
it on your
Yeah.
revenue side.
Yeah, okay.
And the fact too is that it's a 5-year agreement. So any funding that's coming in, if that agreement isn't renewed because the state says that you can or anything
Yeah.
like that,
Cuts
then,
off.
yeah, that's gonna be money you wanna just put toward capital.
So you have a 5-year agreement, you don't get any money till 3 years into the agreement.
No.
Right?
Does it start?
Doesn't start until you
Yeah,
get
doesn't
money.
start until
No,
you start getting money.
so the 5-year agreement hasn't started.
Right, it doesn't,
Oh,
right,
that's
you're
what I
getting
figured.
5 years of
That's
3%
Oh, okay.
revenue.
Because I was reading an article where the state has a lot of them backed up,
Yeah,
Right.
tons of them.
and people are really getting upset about it. I know Athol is.
Especially because they had one tier that's supposed to be priority applicants.
Yeah.
And they were the ones that
Stop
are getting
it.
the last licenses.
You finally got it though, I think, so maybe they can continue.
And that was just the new software that you're using, you know, for the budget things. and
Yep.
You're gonna go over how it
Yep.
works.
Yeah, so, once I officially, the one, I'm still just waiting on, I think library is the only one I don't have because their budgets still have to be approved by the Board of Trustees. So the one that's
good.
represented in your packet is I think level fund from the prior year.
Well, that's great then. It's a lot better than before you came, by the way.
Yeah.
My question is, the financial policy manual,
Yep.
has that been actually published? Is it?
So
Can we get
Just,
one or?
Yeah,
yeah,
that's fine.
I do
Didn't
have
you-
copies upstairs.
Okay.
So they're still working on the official approval of all
Mhm.
policies. I
Okay.
think I sent you guys a digital copy of.
Right.
Yeah,
Um,
you
I didn't get it.
emailed it to you.
I didn't get it. Oh, what, yeah, I don't know what email address you
I'll
sent.
print it out again.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Or I
still,
have-
100 pages,
Did you
probably.
get one?
Oh,
Yeah.
well then I should print it then, rather than.
Did you have it?
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't make them print that out.
Mark, did you?
I got it, yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Sure,
think they've gotten
I
all,
get it.
I believe that they've gotten all the policies adopted, except for maybe the last one or two.
Mhm.
And now they're gonna be going into the procedures. So,
Right. Okay,
Procedures of the rules.
good.
So,
Making progress. That's the good thing. Okay.
Now what do you want to tackle first?
Do you want me to, I guess, so the colored pages here, this is basically a preliminary capital improvement report. These are all pretty much the requests that I got over the last, few months, and put them into some sort of semblance in order of kind of what, how we could fund certain things. And without knowing exactly what our free cash number is, I just kind of used what we had last year as a baseline. So I tried not to go too far over 300,000 as a mark that we would use for potential free cash usage. One of the things you'll notice that the two school requests, the combi oven and the parking lot repairs, I have proposed shifting some of the money that was appropriated at town meeting to the school, because we have more money authorized to go for than is actually being assessed by about $90,000. So that's money that we could shift.
That's what the school.
The school, so we
School
passed a
budget
higher.
came in under.
Yeah, so we passed a
Yes.
higher school budget that was ultimately
Right.
adopted. So with that additional funding, we could move that over to still benefit the school.
Yeah. Great.
Again, I just started from the top of the stuff that I put in for FY '21. So the digital records system, I know that was brought up back at the beginning of the budget to at least start moving into it, start digitizing the records. So if we put $15,000 into it for the first year, start, at least get the process moving where they can start doing some of the digitization, get a vendor on board, figure out the long-term cost of it. Then in the next fiscal year, we could apply for a community compact IT grant and try to cover the remaining cost of it.
So what is that? Is that equipment plus a program plus
It'd be
what?
it would be a program to catalog all of basically the town clerk's
Right.
records. But also the scanning.
Some kind of hardware
all of that.
associated with that system, right?
I don't think
Not
so.
necessarily hardware, it's more
Usually-
software.
Yeah,
Yeah.
usually they hire a company that scans everything.
Yeah.
Oh, so somebody else, you don't buy some hardware like with a gal, you just slip it through the thing?
No, probably
Oh,
like a
okay.
cloud, some sort of,
Okay.
I don't would say cloud-based, but maybe a
Yeah.
cloud-based type system that they could look up the records at any time, make it easier to search. I know we had gone over it before, but the replacing the new A2. If you go over to this big sheet that I gave you, I showed that I tried to put out some of the future debts that we had projected on the capital plan. So that was the first one under ambulance A2 replacement. We took a round number of 300,000 and estimated that it'd be 2%, the same as we have on the capital purchases ban, and we rolled that for 5 years. Basically what that tax, or what that impact would be to the overall debt service. And that did the same thing too, staying with fire and EMS, how they had identified replacing engine 5, which is a 1990 truck, and it's the most up, I think it's one of the, their frontline truck down at Station 2. So that would be hopefully the next year, and then they'd be looking at replacing A1 the year after that, and then trying to stick on a 6-year replacement cycle for the ambulances. And I put in a similar debt schedule for A1, but the goal would be to try to establish some sort of ambulance replacement stabilization fund, so that way we didn't have to actually bond that out. We could actually take that money from saved funds and buy it straight out and save that interest cost. But depends on how revenues are in the next few years. I mean, primary target would be the money coming in from the marijuana cultivation facility to offset that, because it's supposed to go toward public safety.
Good idea.
They're probably the ones who are gonna be riding in it the most.
I don't know about that.
Exactly. The 40,000 for building a new fire station, that would be for the architectural design, or to do the feasibility study with the fire station building committee to try to guide that process, so that way you'd see on the large chart too, where I put a fire station building through USDA, tried to time that out to hit in FY27, the same time you're dropping $140,000 worth of, or $145,000 worth of debt from debt excluded, which is currently tied up in the common project, so that way it softens that blow. And basically replacing it, and the way I did the schedule might not be the correct way, but I did it on a diminishing interest, or a diminishing interest model. You might, if you go to like a constant payment model, it may be less of an impact. So rather than $440,000 in reducing debt over years, you might be able to put it at like 3, almost like structuring it more like a mortgage, where, you have a low principal payment but a high interest payment in the first years, and then it goes down. So I think that's more the way that USDA structures their loans. But I just used the traditional
Straight.
straight model. So that if we were to borrow $8 million, it may be less of an impact. But I just went for the higher number, just to show worst case.
Now, where would that be built? Would that be added on to the new?
So that would be part of the feasibility study that would hopefully be funded in this year, so that way they could try to identify locations to figure out what's the best possible location for a new building.
So I thought that when we built the police station, that there was provision in that design to add on.
The only downside was that I think that with the initial design, the building was actually shifted a little bit more over to the right of the parcel. So I'm not 100% sure on it, but if they had moved the building central to it, they might not have the room on the left side to build, to complete that second phase.
Well, in that study, they can work on
But
it.
that's part of the study. They
Right.
can look at that parcel and decide whether or not they can make modifications to that original plan to make it work. Maybe putting something in front at street level.
Yeah.
Or potentially look at the municipal parking lot over here behind the town hall, because then you could access from both sides and have it drive through from from Mechanic Street to School Street. There's just a few things, it's kind of incumbent on the building committee to look at all of their options and figure out what works best.
I mean, the thing was, as far as I'm concerned, with going with split systems, you don't have a main boiler that someone's already sized to heat this other building. Split systems is, it's room by room, so they can put a new building anywhere.
The thing is that operationally, it's a lot less expensive long-term to put it with
Yeah.
existing buildings, so they're sharing the building as opposed to a standalone.
Yeah.
Plowing and everything like that. Yeah.
Like they
Plus,
were
it is a
originally
central-
supposed to.
Right.
Yeah, it is a central location, no doubt about
It's
that.
perfect location.
Yeah.
If you put it there, do we need
Well,
station two?
We'll have to go to the meetings, convince them.
Who's on the committee?
Uh,
Is there a committee already?
There was a committee
Yeah.
appointed. They haven't started work yet,
Oh.
so.
They're waiting for the 40 grand.
Well, they gotta at least get some meetings to go going on that. But I figure I'd try to get it in there so that way they can at least start the work.
Yeah. Good.
Replacing car 1 for the fire department. The idea with that would be to move the existing 2013 as the inspector's vehicle, because the inspector's vehicle's body had completely rotted to the fact that it wouldn't pass inspection, had to be taken off the road. So currently they're using either sharing a vehicle or using a truck.
I see some of those, that truck going by, and I'm saying, holy God, that thing is still working.
Yeah. Well, it was the white one that used to be the building inspector's
Oh,
vehicle.
yeah. That
Was the
Hey,
Hey, Matthew.
how you doing, Pat? Good to see you.
You feeling
At a
better?
finance meeting.
I am. I don't know what happened, but I woke up this morning and it felt like I finally had energy again after the last 2 weeks.
Good.
So.
Good.
Sounds like the flu to me.
Yeah.
But it was the walking one, I guess, because I could just barely get by, but I wasn't like
Yeah.
all the other symptoms were just so minor. It was weird.
Lucky.
Sorry to interrupt.
No?
Yeah, so 40, that would basically be move that, yeah, as I said, move car one down as the backup piece, and that, the old building inspector vehicle that was repurposed by the fire department is now completely gone, so.
Andrew?
Yes.
Does Matt have a copy of what
I
we have?
don't
Do you have it?
know if I have it.
Is that not the same as on the screen?
No.
Here's the,
Oh, no.
here's the dead, and, this is what we were looking at before. That's CIP. I just don't have another printout. I ran out of paper on the.
Well, look at that.
Oh, thanks. I ran out of paper when I was printing out the budget, so, but it's all the same stuff that's on here, so I can print it off afterward for you. It's all the department requests, so. We'll go through it. It's not all up there, so. All right, brush trucks.
So that's this year's thing, right? That new car? Yeah.
That's for the police fire.
Replacing the brush trucks are basically, we have 3 of them. Right now, they're all 1980s.
Yeah, those are all.
Old surplus military trucks. So what we look to try to do is buy the same base model as the DPW vehicles, the Chevy 3500, with a utility back on it, and then putting a brush skid unit in the back of it, and using those as our new brush truck units. Plus, being the same spec as the DPW vehicles, it's going to be easy for the town mechanic to
Oh, yeah.
use the
Makes
light
sense.
parts.
Is there any way that they could combine the two, the car one and the brush truck to have it, like a universal?
We'll defer to the chief to come in and make his presentation.
Yes. That would be good, I guess, but that would be possible, right? I see some towns that have
Yeah.
vehicles that have a pump in the back,
Yeah.
but I don't know if they go out on routine calls,
I'll,
inspections.
Yeah, I mean, I'll defer to him
Okay.
to
Thanks.
say, to make the case.
Not a problem.
Make
Could,
a note
it could
to
be,
ask.
make a note, could be something to consider.
Ask the fire.
Yeah. Although it's probably $250,000 for the other truck, so.
Station 2 gear lockers, that one's a very minor one, about $5,000, basically to just upgrade the gear lockers for a lot of the state stuff is cancer related, it's very cancer focused, so the hope would be to kind of address that issue that they have right now. They don't really have good lockers down at Station 2, so
Mhm.
fairly minor expense. I know going into the next fiscal year on these, but replacing the stretcher on A1, that one would almost coincide with the replacement of A2, because when they're purchasing the new A2, they're gonna have to buy a new power or stretcher to go with it. That stretcher wouldn't be compatible with it wouldn't be able to cross with the other stretcher on A2. So they'd be looking, or on A1, so they'd be looking to upgrade both stretchers almost at the same time, but given the lead time to build the new ambulance and get it in, they'd be coming in right at about the same time as the next fiscal year closes, so they could almost purchase them both simultaneously. And then I had gone over to the debt service on Engine 5. And then extrication tools. The chief did in his request it for this year, the $45,000. I had moved it over considering the amount of investment that we had put in for the current fiscal year.
As
try
another,
to spread it around a little bit.
right, another question for the chief, I guess, is what we have now versus what we're.
Right, and that maybe, in your question, if there's a consolidation of the vehicles
Yeah.
for inspection, maybe that might be a trade-off to consider.
Yeah.
The TC building, this was brought forward by the Felton Field Commission. They want to, there's some significant rotting that's happening in the roof structures of that white barn. So they have a quote for about $10,000 to rehab the supports of the roof and re-shingle it. So that's what their request is.
Doesn't
for this
sound
year.
bad for that work.
No.
Highway, so 65,000 for dump body. That's the same thing that we had been taught, that we've done for the last 3 years. Gradually replace all the existing dump bodies with stainless steel new bodies. The trucks are fine. They just want to keep them going on the road. One thing that had been identified for years is the need for a new 10-wheel dump truck, though. And I know that they've come before you a few times for that, and I think it was part of the original capital improvement plan. So what they proposed was that it was about $150,000 for the new truck. They're requesting $50,000 from the general fund, but then splitting the other $50,000 between wastewater and sewer, because it will serve all three functions. So that, to try to reduce that impact and not have to bond it out over a number of years, I thought it was a good compromise.
It's a big bugger.
Just going down the library, I know that the replacement of the heating system and air handlers is always kind of, it's been on the plan, but hasn't always been brought up to the forefront. We're kind of still hopeful that at some point we can maybe get some sort of grant funding to take care of that, rather than putting up $50,000 to do that work. But you know, it is almost a 20-year-old system that may need to be considered. If you look at the air handle at the bottom, I think that it's actually designed to be a roof-mounted one that they put on cinder blocks on the ground originally to maybe save a little bit of money. So they did just get a significant amount of the thermal work done on the inside from that Green Communities grant. So a lot of the heat escapes that they had were sealed up, so, and all the windows were sealed shut, so that way they don't leak any air anymore. So we'll see if that improves that need. Hopefully makes those things last a little bit longer.
Stretch it out a little bit, yeah.
Continuing that, the annual replacement of the police cruiser. The next one that they had in line was 2011 Caprice.
All right.
Um,
How about didn't we have a fund we're building up for replacing that from the?
So whether or not, I don't think he's close to
No.
building
but
anything
I
for
mean,
it. But
is.
the goal would be at some point that funding builds up so that way we could skip a year on this and not impact the
Right, you got
free
any
cash.
idea what's in there now, or you get an idea of how it's
I'm
built?
not sure.
That's a
Off the top of my head.
Question for the chief.
Yeah. Question for the chief. I will defer.
Does anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Other than the
I,
chief?
Yeah.
I probably have the report on my desk right now because I did a report of every, the total balance in every single
Yeah.
gift account line item.
Mark,
everything.
we'd like
So-
to ask him, but he's in the Bahamas.
No, I dumped something off of my desk earlier today, so I know he's
Really?
away. All right, so, and then the two things for the schools we talked about. So that's everything that we had identified for this year in the capital plan and for the next
Pretty
kind of
good
few
bunch of
years
stuff.
out. Sewer enterprise, pretty simple. They had $60,000 for a new pickup truck, same spec 3500 Chevy, and then that $50,000 for the 10-wheel dump. Going out, assuming that they're going to continue to have some savings in their E&D, they want to replace the existing jetter that they have with a Vector truck. It would do basically jetting and vectoring, so that's a significant cost. It's almost a $400,000 piece of equipment. Still waiting to see what free cash and E&D gets certified at this year, so we'll see where that goes. And then we still have the one big question mark on this, and what isn't shown is that right now they're in the discussion with Hardwick to figure out whether or not it makes any sense to do the interconnection between them. And I know on the back end, Tom's been working with with Woodard and Curran to establish a 5-year capital improvement plan for the plant to figure out what makes sense chronologically to implement first. So if that doesn't fall through, he'll have that to back up on, and then come to you guys to say, here's the 5-year plan, here's how we plan on funding it. So that wasn't implemented into this, so that's kind of like to be seen.
But they're gonna have an engineering firm do that study, right?
Right,
Good.
yeah, so that way it's not just, let's pick at this, let's pick at that. You wanna make sure that
Absolutely.
everything is done in line, especially if they're
Yeah.
gonna, I know part of their, part of the things that they need to do is do some sort of rearranging of the headworks, so that way it's, because they're bypassing a few steps right now that need to be corrected. Coordinating that along with the other upgrades that needs to be done. You don't want to kind of do something to upgrade something on the downstream side and then destroy it because you didn't correct the problem
Yeah.
upstream. So that's what they're trying to get the engineering study done first. Water, they had the funding for the investigation improvement. That's just kind of given. That's in their operational costs. They also wanted 3,500 pickup, replacing an old truck, 50,000 to replace a 10-wheel dump, and then I know on here it has the upgrade for well 3 and the sewer main replacement in South Barre. Those are kind of really maybe a little bit more pushed out than just a year. That's going to be dependent on some bonding and financing and a little bit more investigation as to what's going to take priority, what's really necessary and what's the best way. So that those numbers aren't firm. They're really draft numbers at this point. Could potentially be pushed out depending on coordination with MassWorks grants or anything else that happens down there. So. And then the other part of that too was that what water, if you look at their long-term debt service schedule, and then you'll see they have one here, the well 3 from the Water Improvement Abatement Trust. It's a $50,000 loan that they have for the next 35 years at 2% interest. I think we might be able to find $50,000, knock that out in E&D. So that might be something that they would want to take care of before going forward. Even the 320,000, that depending on where E&D is, that might not be out of the realm to just knock that one right out too. But there's no early payment penalty on USDA loans, so they could even just chalk that up in a couple of years. And the same thing with sewer, is they have one here for 119,000 before going after, that capital, that part of that capital plan that they bring forward, maybe pay off that loan and then reissue another debt to tackle some of the capital plans, rather than continuing to pay for 40 years or for another 35 years on $100,000.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like.
So hopefully that kind of puts it in perspective for you guys to be able to ask some questions about knocking off debt that might impact future years.
Get that guy on the radio that'll get rid of your mortgage in 9 years.
There you go.
I can get him out of here.
We ready to proceed?
All right.
Go do it.
All right.
Now, you've got another colored page?
What's that? No, it was back. It was front and back. I did both.
How come I got two and they're different?
One's different.
Nothing? Or are they the same?
Same.
Yeah, they are the same.
Oh, I'll
So
have
here's-
one.
Shall be
I'll
copied.
have one.
There's a-
No, you get your copy
I
now.
There you
don't
go,
know
there's
why
your
I
copy.
did
It's a little late.
That's okay.
Put that under my pillow tonight.
All right. So, I'll just start it. So at the last meeting, we sat around, we all agreed on what we wanted to see on the revenue side without knowing what the state, without really knowing what the state number is yet, with really just a guess. To say, to this point, I still don't have a school number. I won't have that until the government budget comes out. Probably about a week or 2 weeks after the governor's budget comes out. I don't have a retirement number. That's a guesstimate number on here. So for the school, we used a 4% as a retainer number, but, and that might be, I think I used that over what was approved, not what was actually final, what we approved, not what the final assessment was. So it's almost 4.5, let's just say 4.5% increase as a whole number in the school. Retirement, I should have that number next week. Right now I have a whole number of 7% for that in here. I don't have insurance. Usually that is within the next month or so. You start getting a better picture as far as what the insurance impact is. So on any of the insurances, I used 5% as the baseline. And I don't have, don't have a number from the library either, just because it still has to be approved by the Board of Trustees before it's officially presented. So it's still, that's just presented as level funded. Starting at the top, if you, let's see, moderators expense. So if you're looking on the sheet, you'll probably go through, you'll see the revenue figures first that we all
Yeah.
Yeah.
looked at. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not sure what page sorry, what the expenses start on.
It's on page 4.
The pages are numbered.
So that's still revenues right up, like you said.
Yeah, sorry, pages numbers weren't on there. Printing it off 10 minutes before the meeting.
Dude.
Sorry. Yeah, I know. You get sloppy. So expenditures start a little, start at the
Okay,
top.
right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the moderator. So moderator, $50 stipend. That's same as it ever was. Select board stipends, I kept that in there. I know we haven't issued any yet, but it's in the budget, so it's there. Wage reserve. So I put this wage reserve line in, knowing that we have 2 union negotiations and a department head negotiation that will have to happen going into the next year. So here's how it broke down. Let's see, I'll put 10,000 to the police contract, 10,000 to the DPW contract, 10,000 to the town administrator contract, just as a blanket. Here's a pot of money that if we go into the net, as they settle, we can pull from that and reduce, and increase the line item and reduce this number, or if it goes to town meeting, we still have a settled contract, at least we have a line item in there that we can move that money into, so that way we don't have to pull it from stabilization. We're still able to.
I thought we just did a police contract.
Well, we've settled the police contract a year
We
and a
didn't pay
half
for it.
after it was already done.
Oh.
So we only had one actual year
Okay.
that we weren't in negotiations.
All right.
Let's see.
But I mean, we should know what the number is for the police, no?
We would when we sell. So this is
We haven't-
FY20 is the last year of the contract.
Oh.
FY21 will be the first year of the new contract, but we don't want to put a number in the budget without knowing
Have an exact number.
what the contract settles at. So
I
that
gotcha.
way, mainly, they can't, you don't look at the budget, go, oh, you put a 2% increase, so you were planning on settling at 2%.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
okay,
So-
no. you wouldn't- That wouldn't be a good idea.
You could put something in though, even just for the steps, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
every
potential
officer's gotta
steps.
go up a
As
certain-
long as you didn't
Hmm.
increase it based off of a projected wage increase.
Right.
If it's already in the existing contract that they're due a step, then that could be built in, but not,
Right.
yeah, what you anticipate the settlement to be.
Okay.
The select board expenses, I kind of went through, I know it's a little bit of an increase, I put that in as just the request because it was based off of, I just kind of looked back at the prior year expenses and where some of our overages were, and I just tried to label some of those out. I think it printed out on there. All the different dues and averages to different professional organizations, so assuming somebody else comes in, these are just average, these are some of the expected costs that might be impacted, so it is an increase, but you could always back that number down to level fund if needed.
Okay, but now on our sheets now, we also have the magic account numbers,
Yes.
finally, so something that's on the budget.
So if I print this out and I hand it to Jean, she'll know exactly what number to put in, it's not gonna
Right.
be ambiguous.
That's why we used to see on a budget, we never know where it ended up.
Mhm.
Now, that's good, I like that,
I
Andrew.
got you. You had the description of the line, but you didn't have the number to.
You didn't know where it went to in the pot to
Right.
see what got spent or did it or what. Now, you just say, Gene, what's in that account? Pow, it comes right out.
Right, and when the bi-weekly expense reports are made, those are the exact numbers that are
Oh,
Yes.
good.
that are shown.
That's very good.
They can probably pick up mistakes that way too, easier.
Exactly.
In 21 and 21 baseline, for the selectmen, is there a reason it goes from 13,120 to 43,120?
Selectmen expense, or which line was that?
Total select.
43,120 to,
Goes from 13,120 to 43,120.
because, so FY20 budgeted to FY21 baseline, so that 43 includes that $30,000 that I had put in there as the wage reserve. That would be pulled from,
Okay.
for the contract.
So that's the whole line, right, from the selectman line all the way till total selectmen, that's all in that.
I have a
Gotcha.
question.
Yes.
Say you don't have those final union negotiations ready
Mhm.
at town meeting. Is that the right account number to put in? Because we officially can't reallocate that after approval to another department without a special town meeting.
Right, but you're gonna need a special town meeting anyway to fund the contract. You still, the idea would be, you have the money that you're raising by taxation available versus pulling it from stabilization. Because unless you.
Why do I missed that. Why do I still need a special town meeting to fund the contract?
Because town meeting has to vote is essentially the final vote of the contract.
We don't know what that contract's gonna be.
Right, so even if,
we have to do a special town
even
meeting
if,
anyway.
I didn't,
let's just say the Board of
they don't
Selectmen.
approve the contract. They approve the funding of the
Funding.
contract.
Right,
Funding.
right. The funding of the contract is the final approval of the contract. So even if it's a 0%, let's just say it's a 0.11 or 0.12 or 0.15,
Okay.
zero increase in the first year. The town meeting still has to vote to fund 0%, like, has to still fund the contractual obligation of the first year of the contract. So that way, then they don't have to fund year 2 and 3, but the first year of the contract needs to be funded by town meeting.
Okay, I better understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because I don't know if you remember when we were talking about the police union contract, that if it went to arbitration said, you're gonna pay a 222, you could still go back to town meeting, and town meeting could vote it down, and that would wipe out the arbitration ruling. So,
I remember that
Yeah.
now. Once you get through the first year, it's stuck, but until then.
Mm. It's up in the air. Okay.
all right, so that's select board. So then, town administrator, kept that level funded.
What, I won't even ask the question, go ahead.
Yeah, it's in the weight, in that salary line, depending on,
Mm,
and
yeah,
you can work with that one over the next few months.
right.
Some of the salary lines right now, I just built it a blanket 2%, without looking at who's due a step, who's due, whether or not we want to reclassify. I'm actually working on trying to put everybody into the AG's spreadsheet of the blanking on it, Pay Equity Act, to ensure that, so the state passed the Pay Equity Act, which basically means that, for like work, you have to give like pay.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't pay, a janitor significantly higher wages than a cafeteria worker. It's basically to try to bring that gap, of sex disparity
Yeah.
up.
Okay.
So I'm working on trying to get everything into this spreadsheet to show where we stand, to make sure that there isn't anything through this spreadsheet that identifies a certain
Really?
category as significantly underfunded. Because if it does, that's where the focus should be to bring the wage up, versus just arbitrarily picking a group and saying, we're gonna bring that up. And
I think we just addressed that.
we had just addressed the bottom 3 tiers by restructuring or I would say, we had made kind of the first step by restructuring the classification plan in a straight line versus making it like custodial.
Having a line for every
Right.
separate administrator that could,
Right.
assistant.
Right.
Mm.
They all fall into the same line
Right.
now or something?
It's basically a 1 through 9 classification. No
Right.
clerks or admins or, you still
Right.
have the DPW classification
But
separate.
within that classification, there could be some,
The only thing that you
Underpaid.
can use as a difference is for wage of like, between wages of like work is years of service and education. Those are the only
Years.
that's the only
yep,
differential you can have
yeah,
between people that have similar work
right. Yeah,
demands.
I agree with you.
So that's why within each class, we established the baseline with the 3-year, the tier system where every 2 years you're getting a step,
Mhm.
but then also 1.5% bumps for having a bachelor's degree or a master's degree.
Sounds good.
And I think that one of the things we could target is, for this year, is whether or not, rather than saying master's degree, is a specialized skill, because somebody like the assessor's office, they don't necessarily need a
Right.
master's, but if they get a full
Right.
assessor's certification,
Yeah,
that may be
Right.
an equivalent.
yeah,
So then it have to be a personnel policy change.
yeah. certifications, yeah, would definitely be worth money.
And I'm not so sure having a master's degree
Would even
helps
help,
a
right,
custodian.
exactly.
And I do think that was the other thing we talked about is the
To help 'em
degree
find a new
should
job.
be geared towards your job.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that came up, I think, and we got, I don't want to say burned, but we had some issues with that in the police department.
Well, one of
They
the
were,
union
there's
contracts.
somebody with a master's
Yeah,
in like arts, but he happened to work for the police.
Right.
And so it's, I got a master's. So I'm just,
yeah.
there's a little
Absolutely.
like, edits we gotta remember to do on the
Yeah.
policy as we move
Yeah.
along.
Well, that's the light work is a nice way to put that. That'll help you, right? Just say light,
Like work.
yeah.
Finance committee, you guys are big spenders,
Yeah.
$12,000.
God, I tell you, that's a great, we have fun at that party. I'll tell you.
Yes.
We're all
Reserve,
getting raises too.
Yeah, right. Right.
reserve fund, I, just preliminarily, I brought that to, from 10 to 20. We haven't dipped into it yet this year, but,
Yeah, we haven't used any
yeah, just
Good,
trying to
good.
yet.
Good.
see if we can bring that up just a little bit.
It, at one time, was 50,000.
Right, and I like to get back to that, but small steps when we have
Yeah.
deficits.
Back in the day.
That's called the whoops fund.
Yeah. So what
Town,
if somebody ran over on their budget?
town accountant, same thing where, you know, it's basically just a blanket 2%, still have to look at that. Talk about, you know, steps and positions on the wage scale. But the town audit, 25,000, that's what we're locked in at, and then the town accountant expense, doesn't have a lot of expenses, $1,500. Sorry, do you want me to go back?
No, I caught up, I'm sorry.
All right, assessors. So. Working assessor salary, I believe that's with a step that this was with they put in the 2% increase, but then also the fact that he has a 1 year, his first year step, which is a big 4% step increase after your first year on the wage scale.
Mm.
That's why it comes out at 6.5.
I think it's come up before, but the stipend being, you know, so much higher than anybody else's stipend.
This is the assessor's stipend?
Yeah, why, I mean, they get paid too, right? They get the hourly pay, but to cover their
Is that
car
bylaw level?
expenses.
Because I know some of these are
Yeah.
bylaws, so it's like you just
Yeah.
stuck with the stipend is if it was approved by town meeting,
Huh.
it's stuck.
But that was
The
before,
moderators is a $50
that might be
bylaw.
before they were getting paid though.
Who gets
That's
it?
for
Everybody
something
gets
for
it?
you to
or-
look up, Frank.
Well, they
So
each
you've
get
got
some.
void work to do.
2,000.
2,000 each.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plus,
I don't know.
the working assessor gets the
I mean-
gets a salary on top of that.
Right. But, yeah, well, they got more than the selectmen though. Is that right?
They're more
Is
important.
that okay?
They do more.
They're not more important, they can't be more important.
Well, they're just as important.
All
They
right,
do have their
all right,
significance.
I'll go for that.
The administrative assessor's salary that, like I said, the salaries, those are the ones in there we haven't really gone through yet,
Mm.
so. Talk about that a little later.
Now, none of these requested budgets that have been turned in by the departments,
They
Uh,
turn them in through this
Mm.
portal.
Mm.
okay, so
Right.
this is the way they are?
This is the way that they are
Okay.
turning it in, so,
Mm.
Because I'm noticing most of them are all level funded
right.
Mm.
as to what you recommended, so that's good.
Yeah, so it's either,
Yeah.
when I sent it out to them, I basically sent it as, this is a level fund budget.
Mm.
Let me know where your increases are, and I think on this wages, I just did the blanket like 2%
Yeah.
increase. So, you know, there was some work done, but a lot of them just kind of went through and just
Mm.
went, yep, looks good, submit.
Yeah, so when it comes down to crunch time, are they gonna come in looking for
More.
more money?
Just bring a lot of tissues.
Well, this is where you can go through it,
Right.
and if you have a question about
Right.
something, I could type it right in here, and they'll be able to see what your question on that is
Alright.
tomorrow, and be ready for when they come before you. So. And
The
then,
assessor's expenses, is that 17,000 what they normally get every year?
yes, so if I click on this. So the light green is what has been budgeted. The dark green is what has been expended.
Yeah.
Recommendation is pinch them.
Wish you could make that a little bit bigger. And
So-
I've got
Can't
my
see a
new
darn thing
glasses
over
on.
Sorry.
Too.
Well, no, it's fine, I can read the
Since
numbers. in front of me.
2016, they've been right about the 17,000, but it looks like they're only using about 80% of it or
Mhm.
less on average.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was probably bumped after 2014 up, and it's just, I think that they might have overcompensated in 15 and then reduced it down at 16 and then held it level funded ever since. So 16, 13, 466, 17, 11,000, 18, 11,000, 19, 13, 4.
So money find its way back into,
That all gets, whatever's unspent rolls back into the general fund.
Yeah.
Or end-of-year transfers.
Right.
Just, now this little magic program,
Oh, that's the
can
best.
we get a look at that?
Yeah, so
We can,
Yeah, how do
Um,
we get into it? That
once
was
I get the
one of my
library,
questions.
once I get the library one in,
Yeah.
I'll be able to close all the requests out and then send this to you directly,
Right.
that you can go in and
Right.
look at it. I just can't send like a
No,
half
no, no,
done.
no, I just think that,
You can't, like, send it updated?
Well,
You couldn't
well, what I
send
could do-
whatever you
what I could
had,
do
and then when
is-
you update it?
What I
for
could
it?
do is I could close it out
Yes.
and then resend the library request to the librarian,
Okay,
and send what we're looking at today to you
Yeah.
to look at on your side.
you'd also have individual sign-ons, right?
Yes.
So that-
Yeah, so you'll get an email saying that you've
But I
been
mean, even
granted
now,
access.
if we had individual emails, you could freeze our copy. And
Yeah. Yeah. So, actually, you know what?
Anyway.
I'll tell you what, since we're doing it,
I mean, this program is the best,
just remember where we're
I
at.
think.
you haven't used it yet.
Best, huh?
You haven't used it yet.
Well, no, but I mean, everything
Until
is,
you
the
actually
way you
use
can expand it, though.
the right
Yeah,
is a
it
little
looks
small, I'll
good.
say that.
Yeah.
okay?
No.
We used to get a whole sheet for this, now I gotta figure out which part of the sheet is what.
well, when you have it, your access, you can always increase the font.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm gonna do,
That's the
you're right.
thing. And if you wanna look at just a certain thing. you
Yeah.
can look at it. Makes it easier that way.
You gotta be kind to us old people.
That's true. Yeah, we're the only ones that
Because
see
you're
the
gonna
show.
get there soon. Sooner than
Matthew,
you
right
think.
here.
You've got a lot.
I've got
of-
contacts and I can't see a darn thing.
Well, see, I wouldn't be able to until I had the cataracts removed last spring.
I have to admit,
Now I can see good.
renewed my license and it now says I have to have glasses.
Oh, well,
I don't need,
I hit that time where it's
Certain
like, it
age.
went like this and went,
yeah,
oh wow, I cannot see any of this. And I went, that sucks.
yeah,
I'm just glad I had the glasses, otherwise that would have been a bad day at the
yeah. the
registry.
I
Hope something gets
passed
taken
without
with
my
you.
glasses. After having the cataracts removed.
All right.
I got better.
2020, huh?
Give it to the end of March to take a look at it.
Success.
All right, so now you guys should have a copy of
Okay.
the budget.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
great.
Great job.
All right. And the Board of Selectmen.
Oh,
Got
thank
it,
you.
too.
So you
My
don't
phone
have to
buzz.
go
Yeah,
slow.
I was like,
It was an odd little,
so if you want to follow along, there you go.
Yeah, you'll be able to see all those numbers on that little screen. We have an 8.5 by 14 paper, I can hardly read it.
Let's go with this. It makes it bigger.
All right, treasurer collector.
Treasurer collector.
All right, 2% on that. The one exception was the assistant collector. So we've been looking at the potential of doing some some restructuring of the office staff. And one thing we were looking at potentially doing is creating more of an HR coordinator type position with the assistant collector position. We put it in here for basically to regrade that position to take on that role. I'll defer to the treasurer to come in here to talk about where we were. Right now, it's just it was in preliminary discussion and investigation, but we figured we'd at least put the number in here to regrade the position if it did make sense.
Okay.
Everything else was generally level funded. Yeah, the SB 45 and the expenses, expenses were level funded. Town council. So I put an increase in the town council line item. I increased it from 65 to 10, just under the unknown of whether or not my successor will keep the same town, will recommend keeping the same town council, or whether or not there's any change. We've had the same town council for quite a while. He could make a decision at the end of the fiscal year, so I figured that was bring that.
Yeah, and that number we're paying now is pretty,
Right.
pretty
So,
low.
just trying to do a little bit of planning ahead on that line.
Mhm.
It's a one line, right? That's it. One shot.
Tax title, treasurer collector's asking for bringing that item up another 5,000 to try to get a little bit more aggressive on some of the ones that we've had in the pipeline. IT. The IT line, so data processing, that goes directly toward the software accounting, treasury functions, and the costs for VADAR. So that's basically between the treasurer and collector, their functions.
Mhm.
IT managed services, that's CM Geeks, that's what we pay them annually to basically be our IT vendor, keep all the lights on for us, make sure nobody's trying to attack us from the back end, make sure that all of our computers are running up and well, and come in and set up new computers and maintain the server when needed.
And their service has been,
It's been good.
Really
It's been
good.
Yeah, but we ran into a few months back, they were a little bit slow, but the issue was that Windows 7 was coming offline.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of their customers that
Yeah.
were trying to do wholesale upgrades, so a lot of their kind of discretionary stuff was getting put on the
Yep.
back burner. But they were always doing their monthly check, checks of all the computers of all that. So some of our projects got put back on,
Yeah.
but we're caught up to date now as far as everything that we had going. They've always been very responsive too. If there's ever been an issue, they'll always handle it right away. IT expenses. So I think I broke it down there on there of everything that we have, because there was a little bit of an increase proposed, but it's basically continue with the ClearGov budgeting software, that was 87.5. Continued maintenance of our website, 4,000. Archive Social, which creates a public record of all of our social media activity. So if we're ever have a public records request based off of anything that happened on our social media, we can search it. Our email, we have 36 town emails issued. It's $12 per month to maintain those, so that's $5,200. Police department uses Office 365. They have 13 subscriptions. That's $3,100 for that service per year.
That's a ripoff.
Yeah.
Is that the cruiser computers?
Cruiser computers and computers, desktop computers in the station. So between the officers, administration, and administrative, so pretty much any computer that they have on a desk. I believe they have at least 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 computers in the station for administrative uses. Plus, you have each cruiser with the laptop. Actually, 365 too. That's each person that works at the has their own 365 account.
Right.
So,
Okay.
so-and-so at barrepolicedepartment.com email.
Couldn't you get a multi-licensing?
Probably good.
Okay.
Usually can.
Hopefully that would reduce the cost.
Yeah.
So we can look at that for next year. Computer replacement and monitor replacement at $1,200 a computer, $100 a monitor. Plan for maybe 5 replacements a year, to just keep the rotating stock going.
Those two are just for the town in general, not a specific department?
Just the town in general.
Okay.
We have, all of our computers are upgraded to at least Windows 10, so we'll at least put 5 in there for, all right, what are our oldest 5 computers, let's just bring them up. Or something, we had a server issue somewhere, any IT, we can use that and say, all right, we're only getting 2 computers. Maybe make that call at the end of the fiscal year versus budget opens, let's buy 5 computers. So, Adobe is, that's used by a few different departments, but it's got a $200 annual cost to it. And then set up for each new computer setup, that's an additional charge on top of our maintenance cost for $300 per setup. So I budgeted for 6 setups just as a contingency with 1 extra one. Bring us to that even $32,000 budget. All right, that's everything for IT.
10 grand.
Town clerk. So town clerk, she included her step increase along with the 2.5% on the wage side. Also, again, coming to you with the request for an administrative clerk, 10 hours per week at $15 an hour. Vital stats, codification, town clerk, expenses, all that level funded from the prior year. If you're interested, here's the historical on expenses for that office. Elections and registrations, so they're gonna have 3 elections next year.
That's right.
So the prior year we had, or this year we have $30,000. The year before, when we had 3 elections, we had $39,450. So she's $40,000 as her baseline number for election expenses, and then the registrar stipends are constant.
What are the 3 elections next year? Fiscal year?
Primary, the presidential, and the town.
Oh, because I thought you just sent an email saying the primary was this fiscal year in March or something.
The primary, there's another.
Fiscal year.
There's another state primary in September.
Okay.
September primary.
Big money grew up in election
Yeah,
process
'cause-
here, I tell you.
Absolutely.
February is the presidential
back on
primary.
No government
September.
should ever be involved in a primary for pretty much a private party organization. I'm so tired of that. Sorry. Again, has nothing to do with what you're doing.
Oh.
I'll shut up.
Under capital outlay, she had put the records management program in there, but anything that was capital, I did bump down to 0 just to, it's still showing in here, but I bumped, on my end upstairs, I bumped it down to 0, so that way it didn't inflate the number.
Because she's getting that anyways, right?
Well, the
That's
thought would
point.
be that we'd fund that through free cash.
Yeah, right.
I didn't
No, but I
include
mean,
any free cash
no.
in these estimates.
No, but I'm saying is, the item she wants, she's gonna get. It's
Maybe.
just not from that line.
Potential.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Well,
right, it's always a
It's up to
maybe.
you guys.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a maybe.
Um,
All the capital.
It is a maybe.
Yeah, if it's in the card, so, anyway, I just wanna double check, make sure one other item didn't get transposed, because I think it did. Here. I'll get to that at the end. Wasting time here. All right, so that's elections, land use, conservation, planning board, and zoning.
And they all come under land use.
They all under the land use division. So conservation expenses, you can see 2,000. They're requesting an increase, however, as you can see from the prior year, only 1 year did they actually fully use the $1,000 that they were allotted. So you might want to ask for additional information regarding that requested increase. Planning board. They're holding their $1,000 for a consultant, even though they only used it 1 year. Like 2 years. 18, 16.
See, that's what that program is dynamite.
So,
People see that.
and then planning board expenses, they have 3,100. But requested. Level fund. And then zoning. Zoning is where we have the admin secretary. That's where we that's really where we consolidated all of the conservation planning board and zoning board. We can consolidate those all into that line. So that would be the full cost. And right now we have plugged in here the economic development director. So
Right.
that's gonna be one that's gonna have to have a pulse on because it's fully grant funded at this time.
Mm.
If it's not grant funded, I do not believe Hardwick or Hubbardston will want to continue with the program. And I highly doubt that you guys will want to pay the full cost of an economic development director for the town. So,
Do we know what that value was? The full cost for our current regional director?
what the
Planning
what the
coordinator.
full impact would be for us if everybody stayed in,
No, I mean, what is he getting paid annually?
55,000.
Okay.
So, unless we decided that we could handle a 55,000 or split it with like
Well.
one other town, or
He brought IBM to town or something. You would.
Sure. So I know that part of his goals is to try to find a new grant to push that forward. But that's one of those ones that we'll have to take the pulse of the other towns to figure out whether or not it's actually going to move forward. Or
Exactly.
if that might be something, if the funding is able to survive in here, possibly the consideration that the town try to staff a part-time professional planner to assist the planning, as technical assistance for the planning board. Just an idea, but
Mhm.
could be a use if it does survive the budgeting process.
And does the grant end? Is it
It's-
fiscal year or?
It will end.
Different?
It'll end in this fiscal year. We have budgeted the funding for the 2-month gap that the current budget wouldn't cover, or that the current grant funding wouldn't cover. So, which was only maybe a $3,000 expense. So, having to take on the full amount would be an $18,000 expense.
Yeah.
Be an $18,000 expense. So yeah, here we actually budgeted $7,600 to cover that gap, and I think that was an over projection based off of some line items that could have been included, but the money is there to at least finish off the end of the fiscal year.
So it all depends if the
All
grant
depends on if
comes
the other
in.
towns decide to continue.
Yeah.
And Hardwick is the lead town on this. The person's technically a employee of Hardwick.
Yeah.
So if Hardwick decides that it's not going to do it, it's almost a dead issue for everybody else anyway. All right. Town buildings. Municipal custodian, the 2% increase. It's in there. Everything else is generally level funded, with the exception of the public safety building, just because of just looking at 19's numbers and where that final expense came out to 46,613. I think that right now we're trending a little bit higher than what we have budgeted here at the 39.5. So at least put it in there to increase it. We can still kind of there's probably still some room to come down with that number. Still trying to feel out the building and what the real costs are
Yeah.
in operation, being a new building and all.
Do we have
Yeah.
12 months of
12
info
months
on
of
that?
electrical, yeah, we do.
We do? Okay.
Right, but it was a few kind of housekeeping stuff.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm
as-
just saying, at least we got 12 months, not like
Yeah, we
if
got 12 months.
you got 6 months, you're trying to figure out what might happen in the next 6.
The only downside is, you know what happens after 12 months? The
Pardon?
warranties all run out. So we run into a few issues. One of
Could
them-
we see a breakdown of that?
Of the actual costs? I
Yeah, to
can
kind of
ask-
see what is the higher cost?
I have,
I know
that's a report that
electricity is high.
I have to run that off software, I don't
Yeah.
have that here, so.
That's a complicated building,
Yeah.
that's not a simple
You know,
building.
The
Well, it
average.
might be
It'd be
able to
good to
survive
see.
You know, 74 degrees in the summer
Mm.
and survive at 68 degrees in the winter. They don't need to always be at
Exactly. We'll put a
the
lot-
comfort level you choose when you're not paying the bill. That's the best way of putting it.
Right. We'll
I'd be
do a
curious
central
to see
program on
what
that, on the
is
heating.
really
Yeah.
using up all the money.
I'll say
in
one
the
thing,
building.
you're sitting around, 68's cold.
Oh, they don't sit around.
If they're
Keep
sitting
moving.
around that long,
Yeah,
well, other than Amy,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. We get her.
So
a
we'll
heater.
see, I'll try to get some of that data, or see if we can at least run a report to figure out where we are year to date, and what the expenses were. I just know we had one big one where we had a it wasn't huge, but it was a heat exchanger that
It didn't
needed
cover.
a new motherboard.
Mm.
And it was like, all right, we know that if we pay for it, we can at least make it to May without overexpending, and we can kind of cross that bridge when we get there. So that's why we're kind of just juggling it right now to look at, to see if we over budgeted or if we under
Mm.
budgeted. But you gotta kind of anticipate one of those happening a year.
Oh, yeah.
One of those stupid little things that jump out and bite you.
Mm.
Town reports, let's pick up there, building department, so, this one, again, just kind of threw in that 2%. What we decided to do was go back, we ran the 1 year of trying to consolidate the building and Board of Health under one line item. And while it worked for the land use, I think that it might be more beneficial if we keep these two as separate, and still funding the same position. Part of that being because you have the regional building commissioner agreement, you can still break, you know, you can still kind of keep that separated from Board of Health. But also with the Board of Health being its own elected board, it at least keeps it in their court. So I think this position, there's that potential that down the road, you may see a split of that into two. Not happening this year, but it may be more beneficial if we just go back to the way we had it before and keep it as two line items.
So what happened with the zoning enforcement salary? It disappeared.
So that was a,
Commissioner salary went up.
so that was, we had originally budgeted for a building inspector and a commissioner. The inspector was, I think, budgeted for like 10 hours a week, but the commissioner was able to take on most of everything the building commissioner was, or inspector was supposed to be handling, so it didn't make much sense to do it. And then when we restructured the wage scale, found that correct lane for the commissioner, we bumped the salary, we bumped that number up a little bit and brought the position from hourly to salary, because the salaried position, because as an hourly position, this time of the year, you're really not doing much. There's not much construction going on. You're kind of maybe doing more office work. But in the summer, you're doing more in the field. It's more constant. It's probably more than 40 hours, so it ends up leveling off. So it made more sense to make that position a salaried position versus an hourly.
Okay.
And then, and we brought that 500 down as a stipend for any for an inspector to come in in the case that she takes a vacation, can provide coverage versus being paid at a straight hourly rate.
Now, who's doing the clerk, building department clerk?
It's still Andrea. So it's still the same position.
They just didn't
But
split
this-
up the
no.
funding of that position into different line items like they had done previously.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're kind of looking at it that really the Board of Health has the control over the Board of Health's, line items.
Yeah.
And, they are a strong board, so almost taking that away from, almost pulling that money away and putting it into the building commissioner almost is like,
But that's not their money.
it's not their money.
Half of it is building commissioner money, not Board of Health. So now
Exactly.
you're giving them money they don't have
Right.
the right to control.
So that's why it was like, all right, we tried it for 1 year, we see where the hiccups are.
No, what I mean by doing it this way, by not putting money in the building department clerk's salary, you're taking half of the salary and putting it under the authority of the Board of Health.
Right.
And they don't have say on the building department portion of her salary.
Right.
You're giving them that control though now. But
They
that
had it before.
Doesn't mean it was correct. I'm saying you fixed the problem and now you're going back to the problem. You have a strong board having authority over a certain line item where they only have 50% control. You're giving them 100% control by moving that into their account completely. So let's just say you get into FY '21. Andrea decides to retire in August. Now the Board of Health has complete control over
That was if we.
who gets to hire that position because they own the funding. So now the new building commissioner, or therefore the Board of Selectmen / town administrator, have to completely defer to the Board of Health in the choice of that person. There's no shared, because they own the funding line item. Unless you have some interdepartmental agreement that you can set up where they understand that despite the budgeting line item, this is a shared service where they don't have complete control. Let's hope it never comes to that. I'm playing devil's advocate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Trying to address an issue, so. It'll be up to the town administrator to maintain a healthy relationship with the Board of Health to make sure that that doesn't happen, so. All right, let's see. Travel expenses, building, we basically just held that all level. Same thing with the inspectors' salaries, so not much to speak of there. Okay. Public safety, here we go. Police. Let's see. Police chief, police chief, deputy chief salary, those were both by contract with both of those. Departmental salaries, the adjustment was, again, based off that due steps, not projected union impact. So even with, just with zero funded, we'd still look at that $3,000 impact just based off of due step increases. Chief is requesting $7,500 more in overtime.
Which, we addressed this before, was supposed to be,
It's supposed to get rid of the
yeah,
overtime.
right, and it's
That's
still,
what the
still
extra
going
office
up, so there's another question.
Yeah.
So, question for, say, administrator.
Do they ever sleep? Do they ever sleep?
It's a special events line item.
For special events, that was to address details for the Halloween events, the car show,
Where is that?
Barre Family Fun Day, but, and any of the parades. So that way, those details were already budgeted, but weren't necessarily just kind of lumped in with everything else. They knew those events were going to happen, so put it into the budget.
Thank you.
Let's see. Chief is also requesting an increase in the part-time salaries line. Has been, and then educational stipends. So let me just see. Okay, so he does have comments on each one of those increases. So the 67.5. Looking to implement new programs, including Coffee with a Cop at the Senior Center, Students Academy at Stetson, Citizens Academy, Life Skills for the 7th grade, a LEAD program for 3rd grade. That overtime cost would be equivalent to $8,000.
He's using overtime for those things?
That's where he's budgeted that
Yeah.
line, because he'd have to call in an overtime, somebody in from overtime to
To cover.
participate.
They won't participate if he shifted it and said, this shift will do this?
Oh, I'm sure they would.
He might, I'm just going off of what he's requesting.
Right.
They have a coffee anyway.
No,
That's the time to have it. with the
That's
overtime.
I'm raising the question, I don't know if there's
Yeah.
actually some type of
Right.
reason where it's like, the union won't.
I don't think there's a
participate.
union reason. I think it's a matter of he'd rather not pull a guy off the road to
Mm.
participate in this program.
Right.
In case something happens and
Mm.
that at least he has somebody dedicated to it. He doesn't go, well, we started this, the Students Academy, but I got to bug out because I got a car accident.
Yeah.
Right, right.
I think that's what
True.
the idea is. He might be able to shift that through, either the school resource officer or something like that, who could
Yeah.
do this within
Part-time
his
officers cover a shift.
part-time officers. I just
Cheaper
think
than overtime.
his total cost of funding it with a full-time person, calling them in off an overtime rate is $8,000.
Yeah, maybe we could,
And that's what he's requesting.
maybe we
Right.
could modify that.
The other thing when I was here at the selectmen's meeting when he came in and talked all about it. When he mentions Stetson, it's nice for Stetson to request it of our police department to do this extra. But where's the money for it?
I was approached
Couldn't they
by,
be billed,
so,
you know,
I
an
was a-
invoice?
I was approached by Peter Gow last week and brought to my attention that they've restructured their grant program. That now they're opening up their community outreach grant program to the municipality to be able to apply for up to $1,000 every year in community engagement grants.
You just made quite a donation to the players and stuff too, so.
Mhm.
they're
So they've
doing-
opened that up
You
to
don't hear the
town
good
now.
stuff. It's like Trump, he's
Right.
doing a lot of good things, we never hear it.
So.
What did he do?
Stetson made a donation to the Players Theater, I guess.
Yeah. So that's something that in the next year, the town could take advantage of and more partner with, and potentially ask for $1,000 to fund that program that would go back to help them,
Yeah,
so.
that's what, something needs to be,
Similar to what the schools did for the SRO. They were willing to contribute some towards that
That's a
salary.
big success too, by the way.
Is it?
That's what I've been hearing.
The kids, he's really good with the kids, he's good with the administration. Administration loves him. So
That's good.
it's a very good
Good guy in
program.
that
they've
role.
got on
God,
It's
just won't
worth
let
it.
him move on to another town in the next 2 months. Nothing against you, that's not about you, Andrew, it's just,
Yeah, no.
It's happening everywhere.
Yeah,
People are-
it is.
No, that's funny.
Yeah.
Us little poor towns in the
Sorry.
older country, we can't afford good people in this one.
So-
what's the specialty stipends?
So specialty stipends, that is for certain certifications that people hold, I believe, yeah. Like so this line where it says that they've added a field training officer, so the field training officer would get a stipend for having that certification. I don't have the full list here, but I look back on prior budget requests, I could probably get that, but it's gonna come present in front of you guys anyway, so.
Yeah.
And then educational stipends. We have 3 course reimbursements at the contractual rate of $200 per course. That's his comment. All right. Other expenses. Let's see. Police purchase services.
He requested more,
Mhm.
do you give a reason?
He's added radio repairs, law enforcement, dimensions, and moved some line items out of other categories. So, things that have been paid from other one, he's consolidating over to this account. Contractual allowances, he actually has 20% decrease, because they're not budgeting in the outfitting of a new officer.
That's good. Change.
Police supplies, 5% increase on that. The armory, it's a bare bones number, 0.6%. Police tuition, he has a decrease. That was the funding that was moved to purchase services, budgeted for 1 academy rather than 2. So sending 1 officer to the academy. Everything else
Maybe
level
seeing
funded.
the cruiser maintenance go
What
down.
is armory? Because we just bought them all guns.
Armory is
Mm.
That's-
the actual ammo.
Oh,
But have they got their guns?
They do not.
I
They're
had
gonna
all
be coming
that
back before you guys
discussion.
because
Yeah, they
they
changed
were
it.
talking about, when he came before The board, basically that the original or quote that he had for the guns, they did the additional investigation before going forward with the purchase, and found out that they were actually discontinuing the line at the model that they had gotten the invoice for. So they've done additional research, found a different gun. It's a little bit more per gun, so we wanted to go back before you to present his case, so that way they could just do it all at once. They still don't have a firm number, they just know it's gonna be higher than what they had originally requested.
Hmm.
That was an article?
That was an $18,000 article, yes.
Right.
Shouldn't we be seeing cruiser maintenance go down?
Well, it should.
Or they
Buying
breaking the
cars
new
around.
ones? Or they breaking the new ones as fast?
Let's
Let's
hope.
see.
I mean, before they were
No,
disasters,
you're
right?
You're right, yeah. They
But
were
I mean,
Yeah,
now,
paying for a new
The
car
newest one was
every other
5 years
year.
old, it was different.
Yeah.
It's tough because, we kind of.
Yeah.
this
No,
up.
I
In
just wondered.
19, we spent 12,006.
Yeah.
The original 11.5 budgeted. 18, 11.3. The downside is that last year, within the last 2 years, we've really gone and tried to break these numbers out from just a police expenses.
Just dumping everything in.
Right, everything used to just be police expenses or police salaries.
Yeah.
We've kind of broken that out into so many categories, so that way, as we go on year after year, we can actually see where
Track.
these numbers are tracking versus just, lump sum items. Now, how come you had
Yeah.
$50,000 in extra expenses? Or
Mm.
how come you
Yeah.
were $40,000 under budget?
Yeah.
only thing I'm thinking is that we knew we had a lot of junk there for a while. And hopefully by now, we got at least 3 new ones or 4 new ones?
We're
We should be
been
seeing
doing one a
something.
year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're in
should
the
be doing
cycle.
something
We're in
different.
6-year cycle, right?
Yeah, almost there.
I think next year, does a full 5-year turnaround.
Yep.
5, okay.
So our oldest cruiser next year, after next year, will be the same age as our youngest cruiser was a few years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chief salary, that's locked in. Departmental salaries, put a 2% escalation on it. Departmental clerk, same thing, 2%. Fire inspector, he's requesting that the inspector increase
Hours.
in hours. I believe that's 40 hours here. Here it was
That'd be a question for the
35.
chief too, I think.
Yeah,
Why?
one increase.
So it was 30 hours last year? From 30.
Yeah.
Up to the
Plus
30.
30.
So you're looking to increase that number because if it was, depending on if he might, making sure you use a different wage scale, if we had gone to 35 hours, it'd be 37,440. And I know that he also has the request to removing the excess money that was collected in in the ambulance receipts, to move that into supplementing some of the EMS overtime costs for the current fiscal year. But probably doing that, either we can move that from other funds or doing that at annual town meeting, because we're not gonna have a special town meeting between now and then. But they took in almost over $20,000 more than what we had projected
Good.
in ambulance receipts, and what we used to supplement the budget last year. So
Mhm.
that money's still sitting there. Longevity, we have 12 members with 20 years of service. Expenses is asking for 5.3% for increase in electrical costs, cell phone costs, SCBA compressor maintenance and building and vehicle maintenance. He's asking for additional $3,400.
Is it worth breaking that up? Equipment versus facility?
I can ask him to do that in the detail.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. Oh, that would be.
I'm not necessarily asking someone to do that.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if you thought.
But that would be,
And lock them up too, maybe sometimes on a bad year, it's like.
yeah, you can.
Expenses, and then he had put in here some of the line items under under the capital budget, but I'm just gonna pop these out so that way it doesn't offset the top number. 3% increase in training, that's just based off of the amount or the pay. Ambulance. Increase in the EMS service contracts. That's due to an increase in the hospital affiliation agreement. He has in here the replacement of A2 and replacement for the stretcher of A1. Bump those out. This will be the last year of payment on those cardiac monitors, for the 3-year payment, so that number will drop off after next year. Level funding the ambulance insurance. And then salaries and overtime. So salaries, he's going to be looking for almost a 9% increase. This would reflect moving that 22,000 from the additional receipts that we had got from 18, but then projecting level funding from receipts in the next for next year, using that funding to increase the salaries and overtime line to continue to support the EMS function.
Andrew, I don't know if
Yeah.
you know, but is their staff pretty much stabilized as far as?
Staff is pretty stable.
Yeah.
I just went through, I know that they cleaned house with a couple of people who have been no-shows, but generally they've had a pretty steady staff. The biggest issue has been keeping the ambulances on the road with maintenance.
Yeah.
And that's been
Yep.
that's why we're trying to get one of the ambulances
Sure.
replaced now, and we need to get one in the next few years. We're actually just talking today that between us and Rutland, we would have had more calls, or would have had a higher call volume for ambulance than Rutland if it wasn't for the calls that Rutland had to do to come to us because we didn't have an ambulance
Really?
available.
Wow.
Yeah, we seem to.
That's a
keep
big
the
step.
ambulance is busy in this town.
Yeah. That was the only difference. It was like 60 call.
Yeah.
It was like a 60 call swing.
Yeah, and they had come here.
Yeah.
With the 60.
That's a big improvement.
Yeah.
Are ambulances also like a 5-year lifespan?
6 year.
6 years?
5-6 year. That's what we're trying to get. You know, with the cruiser's annual 6-year replacement, same thing with the ambulance, but we only have 2 of them, so that's, we're trying to stack the debt service, and then hopefully, see the A2 though, is a 2005. So even with a 6-year lifespan, we're running a 10-year-old truck. Yeah, I don't even know what year we were in.
Yeah, well, I mean,
15-year-old
for the
truck.
first few years, we weren't running it 24/7 either, so, you know, it's getting a lot of use.
What's the 5-year plan then on the 2 ambulances? I just missed that. Are you separating them by about 3 years so that we don't repeat the?
Right, so the idea would be to buy one now in 21. The only downside is that I don't think that we're gonna be able to stretch the current A1 long enough to make a true 6, 3 and 3. So the next purchase would be in FY '23, that'd be in FY '23. So going into the '22 town meeting, you buy a new the ambulance to replace A1. And the hope is that you wouldn't need the debt service, that we'd actually have some sort of funding mechanism in place potentially from the.
The 20,000 ambulance revenues that he didn't account for?
I was more thinking the 3% gross sales from marijuana cultivation, because.
Can you identify one reason they got called to a house for marijuana?
For overconsumption?
No, I mean, has it happened?
Yeah. Not in town, but it has happened.
Well, that's what I meant.
It might have.
It's hard to justify that for that purpose
But
if it has absolutely no relationship in this town. But you guys choose, I'm not gonna
Yeah,
keep
funny.
pushing that one, it was just a thought.
it could be,
I appreciate you trying to spread it out.
so that's what we'll look at for that. Emergency management, $1,000, no big deal. Animal control, I don't have a firm number on animal control yet, but I just plugged in 2%. The dispatchers, this is the preliminary number that I received from Walton Regional, would be a 0.76% increase. Yeah, so, not horrible. I had originally projected 3, and it turned out 3.76, but again, they're also going into union negotiations with their dispatchers, so I think that's preliminary.
$200,000 line.
Maybe. Public Works. Again, we tried not to touch the salary line until we know what's gonna happen with the union contract. Other than DPW super and secretary, again, keeping that at the 3, dividing that between the 3. Sewer and water. Everything else was a level funded expense request. Streetlights, though, we bumped that up by 1,000, just with the unknown of electricity costs. We've been kind of like right on that line of 30,000. Town barn, sanitary landfill.
Where do you have the new lights in town? Where are they budgeted? Because we own them, right? The low street lights that are hanging around town?
Oh, around the counter?
Common.
Yeah,
So
They're behind
those,
a meter.
no, but we own them, right?
we own those, yes.
So who fixes them?
We
Where does
have
that-
to- We would have, if there's an issue with one of those, we have to call our
No,
local
but where's
electrician.
that in here? It's not with the
That's-
streets and roads
that's in
guy?
street lights.
Oh, okay. It's the
Right.
same kind of account as we would do for Mass Electric for the other,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah. It's all being paid out of that line item. Cemetery, the only increase was for the secretary clerk. It's a step increase. And again, education, that's that 4% increase that we just used as a baseline to start, but that's 4% over what was appropriated, not 4% over what the actual assessment was, so it might be a little bit more than 4%. I threw out a 2% increase for Monty Tech. Last year we got whacked by
Yeah.
that one,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I don't think that it's gonna be another jump like we saw last year, but I won't know that until we actually get the
Yeah,
assessment.
do they tell us how many kids more we got, or is that
Not
something?
until I get the assessment.
Okay.
But that was the big thing
Last
year
time.
before, is that they had 4 spots
Right.
available, so they filled the 4 spots, and then out of everybody else that they picked from, another 6 came from Barre.
Something like that.
So,
Bad luck then, bad luck.
Yeah.
so I'm hopeful that doesn't happen again. And then the debt service too, I'm not sure of that number either, so just held that steady. Board of Health. So actually, it was the other way around. We had moved, that money was actually all sitting in the Board of Health's line item, so we're actually moving away from the Board of Health and into the building commission.
Maybe I misread.
So.
I apologize.
It's all right. What we had done was we had reclassified it as its own line item of building inspection, or of inspectional services clerk. So we defined the position as. But there wasn't a new line item assigned to it, so when, without the line items, numbers specifically attached to it, the accountant is essentially guessing, do I put it under Board of Health or do I put it under building? So, when she looked at it, she went, all right, Board of Health, you get it. So, so that essentially shows that restructure. That's the only change there. Council on Aging.
Yes, that all looks pretty stable.
She had a,
Salary increase
She-
because of a classification?
so
Adjustment?
she's requesting this increase. I still have to, this came in today, so I haven't had a chance to review it fully, but she might have been looking at the wrong scale because we had amended, when we went from 41 to 42 between FY19 and FY20, I believe that we had adjusted that scale. But I haven't had a chance to really look. Yeah, I haven't been really focused on the salary because I knew there's more stuff to look at if that's truly projected. But that's her request. She's asking to be moved up the scale. And I think part of that too is might be how we've talked about difference between years of service here and total years of service, and how on our scale we credit years of service here, where on her scale she might have gone, well, I have 20 years of or 18 years of experience, so I should be up here. So I think that might be the discrepancy.
Yeah, 'cause that's a big jump.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't. And you remember last year, our goal was basically that we'll make adjustments, but not beyond 5%.
Right.
So even if there are grades and reclassifications, generally, unless you're also combining it with a due step increase, 5% was pretty much the max.
And that classification plan is finance and board of selectmen approval?
Yeah.
Just couldn't recall who was involved in approving those adjustments.
Yeah. And I know it's gonna need at least some tweaking, because when I was kind of revisiting it and looking through it, fresh eyes after the budgeting process, I realized that the grading level for the step 5 and the step 6, the step 5 was actually 5 cents higher than the step 6. Even though there was only one person in that step 5, and there was no change to it whatsoever, but it just so happened that it was like, I didn't catch that. So. All right, so. Yeah, so there's a lot of detail at the Council on Aging. When she comes in, we'll probably have to ask for some additional detail as far as her request on that. She didn't ask for any increase in her expense line, which is surprising, but again, that might be something you want to bring up. I know we had also talked at one point about the possibility of putting in a outreach coordinator position, if funding was available, considering you're expanding the reach of the Council on Aging itself, with Hardwick being involved. there was the potential, still on the table, donation from Dean Iandoli through CPC Barre for a van for the Council on Aging. In that case, you want somebody that's actually an employee to be responsible for that, and that was one of the thoughts, was that if we purchased a van with money that was donated from it, you establish the position of outreach coordinator, they're essentially using that van as their outreach vehicle. So,
But now, this is the total cost of that whole operation for the two towns,
correct.
right?
Includes the revenue from Hardwick on the back end, on the revenue side.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
okay, so this is the total cost of
Total
the job,
cost.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, there's no secondary funding that they can pull, that they're pulling from, that Hardwick is funding on the side.
No, but somewhere else, we account for some money from Hardwick.
Right.
Yeah.
On the back end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
towards the end of it.
Veterans agent. He made the same request last year. We had bumped it back down to 90, but is asking again to bring his veterans benefit line up to 100,000. I know we did end up going over in the last month last year, so we might have to truly look at this, that funding, or bringing that funding up to 100,000.
I have a question. Does anybody here at the table understand how that veterans benefits process works? In other words, do we have control of that budget at all? Or if someone shows up in town and they present certain paperwork, we just have to pay it and hope the federal government pays us back in a few years?
We have to pay, but it's the state that pays us back, and 75% of what we expend. So we still own 25% of that expense. It's their Chapter 111 right to claim that.
Okay.
That's what I read it.
Yeah, and I was just curious because I realized that I don't know how that works. 'Cause
And it's only if
you
you're.
talk to someone on the street, they feel like every time they walk in the office, it's very subjective what they pay me, just because they don't know the system. So I was just curious.
It's essentially unemployment benefit for veterans, and there's certain ones that are, always going to be on the rolls as long as they're either, unemployed or disabled. But others, if they're able to get gainful employment, will come off the rolls and not fall under the Chapter 111, the veterans benefits. It's kind of it's a fluctuating mark. You might have people go out of town, a town starts picking up for them, where you might have people move in, then you have to pick them up, so.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Say library, I won't touch on that just because we don't have a true budget on that. Everyone else is level funded. Insurance and benefits, as I mentioned, 755, still waiting on those numbers. Stay tuned. Assessments. These are basically our state cherry sheet numbers. We don't have much control over these. Won't know those until governor releases his budget. Debt service. So this is essentially what you're looking at here. So, there you go. Debt principal versus your debt interest. Finally, reserve fund transfers, so I plugged in 20, if we're continue to increase our contribution to OPEB by 5,000 each year. We did 10 a few years, last year was 15, next year will be 20. So if you want to stick on that commitment, that's where we're going to be at. I haven't put anything towards stabilization, but I also did put a line in for capital stabilization if we wanted to try to start that fund too.
Was there an intent? I saw 2 lines of capitalized. Was that
Not
just an
intentionally.
error of an?
It's just a quirky thing I've noticed is that when all the requests came back in, I had duplicate lines for everything.
Okay.
So, not intentional. So it's like one of them was highlighted blue, the other one's in black. I don't know why it duplicated, but it did.
Gotcha, thank you.
So, at the end of the day, we go and combine everything. Operationally, we're looking at almost $70,000. Assuming without the insurance in the school, knowing what those numbers are, it'd be trimming $70,000 from what was requested.
I think,
Yeah, that's not bad.
That's within range.
yeah, I think like 300. Then we have one year was 300.
Correct, yes.
Some big number like that.
So now the fun begins.
Mm.
Probably just familiarize yourself with the numbers, wait for what the school's gonna ask for, wait for what the state comes out with, see where insurance falls, and then it shouldn't, you should have the schedule too of when everybody's scheduled to come in with you, so after you kind of hear everything, you should have the full budget picture in front of you and make the hard decisions as far as what still needs to be done.
So that last note we got from Sandy, that's the best schedule right now.
That's the schedule.
Yeah. Okay.
Nobody's come back to say that they
They
couldn't make any
couldn't
of
do
those
it, yeah,
dates.
great.
No, they won't.
Still a lot of pages, but a little bit easier to deal with, I think.
Yeah, hopefully it's a little bit more structured too.
Right.
Absolutely. more
Yeah.
structured,
Yeah.
This-
I have sent to them the FY20 budgeted projections for all the tax stuff. They just haven't had a chance to hit the submit button on getting those in. So hopefully by the next meeting, if you have any questions on where we project year to date on what was budgeted, that should be on there.
What's the other revenues breakdown? If there is one.
So you send me that thing on a computer.
Yep.
What am I gonna see first? Nice picture like that, or do I have to do a couple of clicks?
They probably
before?
ask you to sign in, and then you'll see this.
Yeah.
You will?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Usually what happens is you see something strange, and you, oh, up on the top you do click before, okay.
Now, can we put in like a comment line if we have a question on it?
Yeah, so if you scroll over, you're still gonna see these note
Yeah,
lines.
yeah.
So if you click on any one of those, you can add in your notes, and everybody else should be able to see what you're asking.
Oh, I
And that-
got you. Our previous comment would be
And
about the
that's not
box.
gonna be,
Yeah, and then you
uh,
have the box to add more comments.
That's not gonna be a violation of open meeting law.
As long as you don't keep on going back and forth.
Okay. You just,
Just say you have a comment. Don't start asking questions.
Right.
No, the thing is, we get that down, and I put a note there. Unless I send it to somebody, it doesn't go anywhere, right? Or does it automatically go?
Did you get an email?
It's
It'll
like a
pop
little
up on there.
billboard that.
It'll pop up on there, so that
Yeah.
box is doing something I didn't ask it to do.
Well, once you hit save,
Yeah.
then it'll pop up.
Then anyone who can look, who has access.
No, but you won't get it right
It
away.
won't be, you're right. I don't believe this is sending an email to Mark saying, hey, Ted left a comment,
No,
correct?
no. If you come in and review it, it's almost like a Google Doc sheet. If you go in there and you edit it, and somebody else jumps in, and they'll see what you edited or what you left comments on. But as long as you're not going back and forth and going, oh yeah, you're right.
No, all
Can't
I'm
have a
saying,
conversation about
Right,
it.
right.
No,
You're right. Why
That's
is
it.
that high?
no,
Yeah.
so,
And if you word it like this, I would like to discuss this as an agenda item.
Yeah.
And what you wanted to discuss is kind of, you can call it a question, a topic, it really means you're talking about the next meeting's agenda.
So, in other
So,
words,
in other words, if anybody pulled one of those crazy like records requests and wanted to say you guys were,
Well,
if you always label it like that and then don't get in a back and forth, you're
The thing-
probably never gonna have to worry about
but
it.
the thing, so that never resides in my computer at all.
No, it's
Okay,
on the
so
cloud.
I'm already talked into your box. When I do that, click the yes, goes to your box.
So if I come in here, I can also pull up an audit trail, and it can tell me every single person that came in here made a change to anything on that in the entire budget and at what time, even before they hit submit. So
Well,
if there's
they're
ever
logged
any,
in right now,
if there's anybody that says, well, I want to know what you guys talked about, here you go, here's the audit trail and the entire budget.
It's interesting.
Now, if you've got, like, these coming in on the first meeting,
Yep.
and you see something, one of us sees something on their budget that we're looking over, that we want them to be prepared to answer
Right, exactly.
at the
Good
meeting.
point.
So they can't say, well, I'll check into that.
Yeah,
They should be able to.
They could say
should
it,
be able
but
to
I
should
see
be
it.
able
It's a
to
good
put
question,
it
Claire.
so that they would see it and,
They should be able to see it in the notes. You may want to follow up with an email because I'm not sure what the,
They actually have to log in.
yeah. it
They'd have to
doesn't- it
click
doesn't
on
say
the-
So if
Claire
you
left a
say that,
message.
they're not gonna know you said it, or they could plausible deniability
Yeah,
type.
yeah.
Well, I never saw that, and then you could ask Andrew to say, did they log in since?
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, but, okay, so, but if they don't click on the note, then they'll never see it.
Right.
That's
Okay.
my understanding.
Oh, okay, all right. That's
Well,
fine.
some departments don't look at their emails either.
Well,
I've
What are you
been
gonna do?
sending one for.
what are you gonna do?
So, if you're
They haven't
curious
answered me yet.
as to what the other revenue is, this is what it looks like.
Mm.
Did they have
But you
it?
see, like last year, we had 273,000, we're projecting at 100 this year.
Yeah.
I'm just-
The big one was this bad boy right here, $150,000 that we collected from cashing in the
Oh,
bond
right,
from the
right.
former
Yeah.
collector. So that's why you see some big fluctuations with those figures.
It would be much easier, though, Ted, we can tell them to,
Probably.
Yeah,
and so they come in prepared.
but I think,
They can email them before they're scheduled to come in and ask them
Yeah.
to look.
Yeah, we reviewed your budget, we have these questions, please
Yeah.
come prepared.
Yeah,
okay, look up the budget,
You
click the
could get a
note.
little meaner.
Well,
You say, if you don't come in prepared, the answer is you get no more money.
I said we reduce it by 10%.
Well,
We
I'm
did
saying, I
Fair,
mean,
you
you
know
have,
this.
you could
We
play
did
the
that
card
for a
if you
few
wanted,
years, it
but
wasn't-
we know how that, it's all political at that
Yeah.
point.
We have no other data than your historical expenditures, and you've historically under-expended your budget requests. Therefore, we are making an executive decision to reduce your line item.
Well, the thing is that you got a couple of little spots there where you have some money. And then at one time, we were saying we had one little thing for all of the whoopses. So we do have something like that in there now, right?
Right, that's that, the reserve account.
yeah.
Yeah,
the
'cause I'm
reserve
saying is-
fund.
That's why we bumped that from 10 to 20, bumped the request from 10 to 20. So, I mean, really, if you're really up against it, you can't find anything else to cut at the end of the year. You could look at that, bump it back down to, from 20 to 10, where you are this year, and pick up
Well,
another 10.
but the thing is, if it's in John X's budget, gonna spend, okay? If it's there, and he has a real problem, we have the money to pay for it, but
Yeah.
he won't
Has to
spend
be
it
an emergency.
if he didn't need it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, I like that little home run in the back.
It has to be an emergency.
Right, but the point is, we have a
It
little
has to
money
be an
for
emergency
that.
As long as you're on the board. Because there's no written word that says this is
Yeah.
specific for only emergency. There's no like approved
was.
town bylaw
Yeah.
that says this can only be used for that
See, it
purpose.
was written somewhere.
The town
Meeting
may
notes.
appropriate up
Yes,
to
we
5%
refused
of its
some towns
operational
because they
costs
were
into
just,
reserve.
watch your
As per the
intelligence.
IRS, so
I agree.
essentially
with the
discretionary.
intent, but I don't
No, but I
think
mean, that's good.
So that's
something
everything.
that
Yeah, great.
forces the
Hopefully
finance
it
committee to
leads a
use that
good
as a determination.
roadmap for
So in other words,
the next
No,
person.
I
to
think
pick
this
it
is
up.
good.
you actually have the
Really.
ability to do it.
Thank you very much.
There's no regulation or rule that says you
Sorry.
can't do it.
At least I give them, at least
My
I'm not
understanding.
handing them
Some
nothing.
of Some of them
Appreciate it.
budget their money this big company.
Appreciate you guys' support.
Got one other question.
Only had 50.
Do you ever have any word in the discussions with internet people from the other town?
Yeah, make a motion, we
To have a name like
adjourn.
They haven't made any, I've had the discussion, but they haven't moved on it.
No, that's all right. Is there somebody I could call?
This, at the head here is the headline, got me. November 15th, yes indeed. Did we take a vote? Did we?
Yeah. You second?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Okay, I
Okay.
didn't hear you say that.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Imagine
I've got
that.
a couple of questions, I thought maybe before we got into anything. When I was done. What's the status on the land for Felton?
So,
Because you were working
yeah,
on that, so I wondered how
yeah,
far it had gotten.
I've been in contact with Ms. Delaney
Yeah.
off and on. Basically, you know what, under our bylaws, it says that, you know, there's the note on the 21E
Okay.
to be conducted. I talked to her about it, I looked at the way the bylaw wording is constructed, and the Board of Selectmen have the authority to, you know, vote whether or not they're going to require a
Mhm.
21E. So I asked her to provide some sort of statement and backup to basically affirm that there's no hazardous waste contamination on that property before, you know, I don't want to have her spend $500 on a
Yeah.
full-blown 21E assessment to be done, so at least some sort of certification or statement to the Board of Selectmen stating that there is no hazardous waste issues there before taking an official vote to support.
Because I don't believe there was anything
I
on
don't,
that land.
I don't think so either. And she said that all they used it for was like for picnicking and stuff like that.
Yeah, because my daughter used to go swimming in the river with a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Her family
So-
owned part of it or something, they used to go swimming down there.
Yeah, so Jim
they-
Beard's supposed to be working on the actual wording of the town meeting vote and the deed transfer stuff, so everything else should be all set once the Board of Selectmen just vote to not require a 21A. And support it. I tried to get her into a Board of Selectmen meeting to at least kind of give a little bit of a background as to
Yeah.
why they want to make the donation and all that stuff, but a lot of they couldn't make night meetings and she's going to Florida. So-
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Another thing was on the host agreements on the marijuana, where they stand, and
Mhm.
will there be any money coming
Yeah.
in
I wouldn't project any.
during this budget year?
I wouldn't project any
Work
money
on?
for this budget year.
Okay.
If there's anything, it'd be minimal because the tax revenue that 3% tax revenue that's stated in those agreements
Mhm.
comes in 14 months after.
Okay.
Yeah,
Their
they have
first-
yeah.
their first statement?
Right, so
So
you have to
they-
get it, bring it in, have it up, like, basically kind of like, yep, this is the money that we made, and then pay the amount. So I don't see that coming in this fiscal year, or in the next fiscal year.
Do we hear any, does the selectmen hear any progress reports of how these outfits are coming? How close they are, or
Yeah.
probably
The
not?
one, I know that the one, or, the CPC one is close to being
Okay.
open. They've done a few site visits,
Mhm.
seeing the progress on that.
Okay.
I mean, the one on High Hawk Farm just got approved, so there
Yeah.
hasn't been any push, any
That'll take a while.
motion on that. And I haven't really gotten much of an update on the outdoor cultivation one, although it's in the middle of winter, you don't really know how much progress he's really gonna make. Most of that is really on the licensing side, which is its own process, so.
Okay.
Mainly the licensing stuff, CPC is the closest.
Well, good.
That's the one by the solar farm down there? Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they have a building up?
Yep, building's up, and they're very close to going into operation. We've actually started some of it before the end of the,
Happy New Year.
Hey,
Yeah.
They're not, are they growing in it?
they are not officially growing in it,
Okay.
because they don't have their indoor cultivation license approved yet, but they did start doing outdoor, at the end of the last, I think they got it into the ground around July, August, so they
Yeah.
didn't have a full year of cultivation, so
Yeah.
they at least were able to prove proof of concept that they could do it. So.
Okay.
Now, does that stuff die in the winter? And you have to plant it again like
It goes
corn?
dormant, kind of like a.
Oh, okay, so you don't have to plant it again
I
next
am
year?
not sure, to tell you the truth, so.
It's not like corn, then you gotta plant it every year.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like corn or if it's like grapevine, so.
Yeah.
No idea. I got a black
Yeah, I
belt.
have to sniff around there.
depends on the temperature.
Start Googling how everything froze. So maybe in 2022.
22, you'll probably see it, but I would say you probably want to see what comes in for a year before you start projecting
Yeah.
it on your
Yeah.
revenue side.
Yeah. Okay.
And the fact too is that it's a 5-year agreement, so any funding that's coming in, if that agreement isn't renewed because the state says that you can or anything
Yeah.
like that,
Cuts
then,
off.
yeah, that's gonna be money you wanna just put toward capital.
So you have a 5-year agreement, you don't get any money till 3 years into the agreement.
No.
Right?
Doesn't start.
Doesn't start until you
Yeah,
get
doesn't
money.
start until
No,
you start getting money.
so the 5-year agreement hasn't started. yet.
Right, it doesn't,
Oh,
right,
that's
you're
what
getting
I
5
thought.
years of
Actually.
3%
Oh, okay.
revenue.
Because I was reading an article where the state has a lot of them backed up,
Yeah,
Right.
tons of them.
and people are really getting upset about it. I know Ethel is.
Especially because they had one tier that's supposed to be priority applicants,
Yeah.
and they were the ones that are
Stopping
getting
it.
the last licenses.
You finally got it though, I think, so maybe they can continue.
And that was just the new software that you're using, you know, for the budget things. and
Yep.
You're gonna go over how it
Yep.
works.
Yeah, so, once I officially, the one, I'm still just waiting on, I think library is the only one I don't have, because their budget still had to be approved by the Board of Trustees. So the one
that's
that's
good.
represented in your packet is I think level fund from the prior year.
Well, that's great then. It's a lot better than before you came, by the way.
Yeah.
Thanks.
My question is, the financial policy manual,
Yep.
has that been actually published? Is it?
So
Can we get
Just-
one or?
Yeah, that's good.
I do
Didn't
have
you-
copies upstairs.
Okay.
So they're still working on the official approval of all
Mhm.
policies. I
Okay.
think I sent you guys a digital copy of.
Right.
Yeah,
Um,
you
I didn't get it.
emailed it to you.
I
Right.
didn't get it. Oh, what, yeah, I don't know what email address you
I'll
sent.
print it out again.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Or
stuff,
I
it was
have-
100 pages,
Did you
probably.
get one?
Oh,
I did get it.
well then I should print it then, rather than.
Did you ever?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't make them print that.
Mark, did you?
I
get
got it,
Yeah, yeah.
So I think
Sure,
they've gotten
I
all,
got it.
I believe that they've gotten all the policies adopted, except for maybe the last one or two.
Mhm.
And now they're gonna be going into the procedures.
Right. Okay,
Procedures and rules.
good.
So,
Making progress, that's the good thing. Okay.
Now what do you want to tackle first?
Do you want me to, I guess, so the colored pages here, this is basically a preliminary capital improvement report. These are all pretty much the requests that I got over the last, few months and put them into some sort of semblance in order of kind of what, how we could fund certain things. And without knowing exactly what our free cash number is, I just kind of used what we had last year as a baseline. So I tried not to go too far over 300,000 as a mark that we would use for potential free cash usage. One of the things you'll note is that the two school requests, the combi oven and the parking lot repairs, I have proposed shifting some of the money that was appropriated at town meeting to the school because we have more money authorized to go for than is actually being assessed by about $90,000. So that's money that we could shift.
That's what the school.
The school, so we
School
passed a
budget
higher.
came in under.
Yeah, so we passed a higher school budget that was ultimately
Right.
adopted. So with that additional funding, we could move that over to still benefit the school.
Yeah. Great.
Again, I just started from the top of the stuff that I put in for FY '21. So the digital records system, I know that was brought up back at the beginning of the budget to at least start moving